Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another movie log. This is going to cover the films that I watched between April 20th and April 27th. And there are only 8 films this time, so I promise to get you out of here very quickly. I'll try to go through this very, very quickly. Starting off with the big guns here, let's go to Roberto Rossellini's War Trilogy. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had watched the first film in the series, or in the box set, Rome Open City, and found it to be just an incredible film. So this week I decided to finish out the trilogy. I watched Paisan and Germany Year Zero. Both incredible films. I mean, wow. And I will watch these again. They're so rich and so powerful and so complicated. Paisan takes place in Rome. Well, there are other parts of Italy, but mostly in Rome. During the last days of the World War II, the Americans have come in, the Germans are on their way out, the partisans are still fighting the Germans and the fascists, and the people of Rome are adjusting to having the Americans with them. So it has these little vignettes of people struggling just to survive, and the culture shock between the Americans and the Italians. It's really fascinating. The only actor in all of this, or I should say actress, that I knew of, a name that I knew, is a woman named Harriet White, whom I've seen in some 1960s films where she sort of cornered the market of playing creepy housekeepers in films by Mario Bava and Ricardo Freda, films like The Whip and the Body, Black Sabbath. She was also in 2 films by Freda. One was The Horrible Dr. Hitchcock and The Ghost. Anyway, she's very young here, and I believe Harriet White, I don't know that much about her, but I think she is an English actress who lived in Italy all of her life. Her full name is Harriet White Medine, so I'm assuming she married an Italian man, and I understand that she became a very famous dialogue coach for Italian actresses trying to speak English. Anyway, she was very good here. It was nice to see her so young. Very good actress. Germany Year Zero takes place in post-war Berlin, where these people are just trying to survive amid the rubble and the shortage of food. And it focuses on a young kid named Edmund. I think he's supposed to be about 12 years old, and it shows him trying to survive with his family and dealing with all the other children and the adults. His family is living with another family, and it's very crowded, and he is so conditioned by the world that he is living in and what he has learned under the Nazi regime. He ends up making an incredibly tragic decision. It's a very shocking film, really, a very shocking ending. So glad that I finally finished this trilogy. All right, so the other prestigious film, we'll put that in quotes, that I watched is another Criterion, The Life Aquatic, directed by Wes Anderson. Great cast of actors. We have Bill Murray, Owen Wilson, Angelica Houston, Cate Blanchett. Who else do we have? A couple of people I'm leaving out here. Jeff Goldblum, Michael Gambon, Willem Dafoe, and Bud Cort. You would think with all this terrific talent here, this would be a terrific movie, and it's not. I was very disappointed. I kept waiting for something to happen, something that would make me laugh, because I guess this is supposed to be a comedy. I'm just not getting it. If anybody else out here has seen this and likes this movie, please tell me what it is that I'm missing, because I did not get into it at all. So this is going into my to give away pile, and I'm glad that I only paid $3.33 for this used, because I would have been very upset if I had paid full price. So after experiencing this disappointment, I decided I needed to salvage this particular evening. So I went for a real classic, something I'd seen many times before. That is Reformed Schoolgirl. Now we're talking classic cinema here. 1957, put out by American International. I picked this up years ago at a flea market, so this is kind of a thin-packed bootleg thing. Pretty good imagery, though. It's a typical teen angst, juvenile delinquent story about a young girl who gets sent to reform school for being involved in a car theft, which she had nothing to do with. She was riding in a car that was being driven by a guy who had stolen the car. She had no idea. And the guy is played by Ed Burns, who plays a terrific JD in this film. about a year later, he would become famous on television for the TV show 77 Sunset Strip. The young girl who's top billed, played by Gloria Castillo, who, of course, if any of you have seen The Night of the Hunter, she had a nice part in that film. And that may have been her first film, but she is really cool in this. Also in this film, we have two other actresses who are perfect for this genre, made a lot of films like this. One is Luana Anders, who was also well known for being in Francis Ford Coppola's first film, Dementia 13. She was also in The Pit and the Pendulum. And also Yvette Vickers is in this. Yvette Vickers is a legendary name for freaks like me, for films like, let's see, The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and The Attack of the Giant Leeches, Yvette Vickers. And very last on the list of the cast members here is Sally Kellerman. So I guess this was her first movie or something, but I'm assuming she was playing one of the girls in the reform school, but I could not figure out which one she was. She must have looked terribly different as she got older, because I thought I knew what Sally Kellerman looked like. Another rewatch that I did, I watched Sense and Sensibility just because I hadn't seen it for a long time, and I acquired this from my aunt who passed away recently, and wanted to see it again. The perfect film, perfect visually, dramatically, everything about it is absolutely perfect. Terrific actors: Emma Thompson, Kate Winslet. Let's see who else: Alan Rickman and Hugh Grant. I almost forgot Hugh Grant's last name. All great actors, speaking the great dialogue that was written by the screenplay from Emma Thompson, who won an Oscar for that. Terrific film. Another rewatch was this classic movie from MGM in 1932, the best picture of that year, Grand Hotel, starring Greta Garbo, the Barrymore brothers, Lionel and John, also Joan Crawford, Wallace Beery, and Louis Stone, Jean Hersholt. Classic film. And I watched this because my friend Harry Benson and I were talking about another classic film from MGM, Dinner at 8, which had another all-star cast, and I think it was me who brought up Grand Hotel, but it made me want to see this again because it's been a long time. And I'll tell you something, as magical as Garbo is in this, and she really is wonderful, the acting honors go to Joan Crawford because she is so realistic and so believable that she's a pleasure to watch. And for those of you who don't know that much about Joan Crawford beyond Mommy Dearest, maybe, and some of her later stuff, you might want to check out some of her early work in the 1930s. She was really fantastic. Okay. Two more films that I watched. These were from Dollar Tree, and of course you never know what you're getting from Dollar Tree, but this is a good movie. This is a film called Recount. It was an HBO film, and it's all about if you remember when the presidential election between Al Gore and George W. Bush, and there was this big problem in Florida with all the votes, the hanging chads and all this sort of thing. Well, this is the dramatic story of that very real-life event in our American history, starring Kevin Spacey, Bob Balaban. We also have Laura Dern, who's playing the Secretary of State of Florida. Her name was Kathleen Harrison, I believe it was. Catherine Harris. Great performance by Laura Dern. Everybody's good in this. And it also has an extra feature where it has the true inside story of the 2000 presidential election, which I need to watch because I've forgotten a lot of those details. And finally, another Dollar Tree special. This is something called Arthur Newman, starring Colin Firth and Emily Blunt. A very interesting little film that knew nothing about, never heard of it until I picked it up for $1. It's actually not that bad of a film. It has little elements of some other films sort of introduced, and like, for example, Arthur Newman, this guy decides to just walk away from his life, walk away from his family, and establish an entirely new identity, which reminds me of the guy in the movie Seconds, right? Although it's not nearly as dramatic. He doesn't undergo plastic surgery. And then he picks up this young girl who is obviously very, very troubled, and he's trying to help her. And it sort of reminds me of the movie Detour, where the guy Al Roberts picks up, this is the name, Al Roberts? I think so. He picks up Anne Savage as a hitchhiker, and she ends up, ruining his life. And so that's kind of an interesting thread. And then finally, these two people, when they get together, they start breaking into people's houses for no particular reason, and sort of going through their stuff, sleeping in their beds, having sex in their beds. And it reminds me of the movie from Christopher Nolan called Following. Okay, now it's not nearly as dramatic as any of those other films, but it's not a bad little movie, and I was quite surprised. So it was an enjoyable experience. And that's my week, and I got you out here in just about 10 minutes. So let me know what you think. Comments are always welcome. Good night.